Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Well, in our travels together, we've discussed many Ruger pistols, including the LCP-2 and the LCP Max, and it occurred to me not long ago that the original LCP has not been discussed. It's still a great little compact firearm, so we need to discuss it, and we're going to do that today in just a minute. Right, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and haven't had a chance before now and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen, or if you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video, hit subscribe that way. Don't forget to hit the bell. It'll let you know whenever we do something new. It's a simple thing that helps out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, the Ruger LCP. A long time ago, I was totally against tiny guns. Very, very against tiny guns. I've got big fingers, kind of a big hand, and a lot of guns I just couldn't really get comfortable with. I didn't like the idea of having something small, and I've had some bad experiences with some small guns too. We're going to jump into the size comparison here, and to show you the one little tiny gun I've actually carried before. And that's my little Beretta Tomcat here. Now, of course, the Tomcat, it's different. This is a 32, and of course, the LCP is a 380. But talking more about size than being an exact match. Now, for the time that the Tomcat was made, to me, it was an amazingly compact gun, and metal construction. It just felt very solid. I carried this gun in my pocket for many, many years, and felt pretty good about doing so. It only had one real catch to it. It's kind of a design thing, which I'll cover when we talk about the LCP in a little more detail, because the LCP, in a way, has that same thing to look out for. But you can see, compared to the Tomcat, the LCP is very thin. It's very small. So if you're thinking about carrying something like this, of course, that's the first step. Obviously, this could be a great pocket gun, or it could go in the waistband, either one. Okay, we're going to jump right into the features here, but before we do, we're going to take a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the Ruger LCP chambered in 380. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, we're going to do our usual deal here. We'll take the magazine out. Let's see that that's safe. You can see that there's nothing in the chamber, and we are as safe and clear as we can be. So start from the top down like we normally would. You got kind of a nub of a front sight here, and you got like a nub of a rear sight with a notch. Not real fancy, but you're talking about a 2.75 inch barrel. A gun like this is not exactly designed for, precision. So fancy sights are not really necessary. You've got some pretty good serrations here in the slide. There's a pretty good spring on this, so those serrations actually come in handy to manipulate that slide correctly. You got your slide, stop, and release there, and that takes a little bit of doing. It's not hard, but you have to deliberately move that piece in there, so it's got a very tiny little shelf it goes into. I'll talk about the trigger more in the range section, but the trigger guard, I really like the fact that it's large. I've got long fingers, and I hate hunting around to try to get my finger in the trigger guard, and on small guns that happens a lot. Okay, so as far as the action itself, I don't know why, but I've seen a lot of people talk about this gun. It's been out for a long time, by the way. I think this was like 2008 SHOT Show when this thing first showed up, so it's been around a long time. But I still hear people call this a striker-fired gun. And I still hear people say it's a single action gun. Neither one of those are correct. This is an internal hammer double action pistol. And if you look, you can see clearly, there's the hammer right there. When I pull the trigger, you can see it come back and then fire. Now, when you rack the slide, you move the hammer, it's like a half-cocked position. And then, of course, you pulling the trigger, that action creates this secondary action of the trigger coming back and then firing. So therefore, it is a double action firearm. All right. I like the groove right here they give you. Your thumb just fits in here very nicely. It's very comfortable. Decent amount of texturing in there. Of course, your magazine, you've got your little magazine release right here. It's kind of in a weird place. You got like just a kind of a cutout, but it comes out very easily. It's not hard to manipulate at all. And then the actual magazine, you've got a little lip on it. Now, even with the lip on it, you're going to be lucky to get 2 fingers on it, but that's enough. You got to remember, this is a tiny, tiny little firearm. By the time you have 2 fingers firmly holding this and your thumb in place, it's not like it feels like it's going to fall out of your hand. Plus, it's a .380. It's not like you're trying to shoot .357 Magnum out of this, so it's not going to try to fly out of your hand the same way that a large caliber weapon would. Now, the one gripe I do have, and it's not just with Ruger, but so the magazine is 6+1 capacity. Of course, we said this is a .380, but they just give you 1 magazine. And anytime that I review a gun and they give you 1 magazine, the same gripe is going to come out because, Ruger, if you're listening, gun prices fluctuate. We tend to overpay for guns anyway a lot of times. Not saying to raise your prices, but if a gun costs a little bit more and I got 2 magazines, I probably wouldn't be that upset. 1 magazine just doesn't seem like a very good deal to me, no matter what I paid for the gun. But anyway, so that's going to be your overall review of the features. Now, I was going to show you something, and I still will. I mentioned earlier that this has one thing that, like my Beretta Tomcat, you got to watch out for. And let me pull this slide back again, and then this is what I'm talking about. If you see the back of the slide, these points here. Now, it's not uncommon for a slide to have those kind of points, but the reason it matters is, you see my hand? Okay. Now, it looks like there's plenty of room there, and there is plenty of room. But if you're in a situation where maybe you're, nervous, or maybe your hand is sweaty and your hand gets to moving around, if your hand gets up too high, it's possible you could get railroaded by that thing. And the way I know that is because a long time ago, using my little Beretta Tomcat here, I experienced that very thing. The Tomcat has got a kind of a painful set of points on the rear there, and if you're holding it, and you let your hand ride up just a little bit, that can end up getting into your hand. Not a very pleasant experience. So, just something to keep in mind. I don't think it's a huge problem. My hand fits pretty good, and I make a point to just make sure I keep my hand low, and I haven't come close with it with this gun, but it's just something I noticed. So if you have a big, if you have a bigger hand than mine, if you have a very big beefy hand, maybe a lot of extra skin around the top there, just be careful, especially if you're doing a lot of, rapid shooting, where the gun might move around your hand a lot, because you wouldn't want to get injured that way. So it's just kind of a safety thing to keep an eye on, and that's going to cover the features. So anytime I'm talking about a small gun in the range, I try and establish some good expectations. A lot of people buy a gun and they think a little tiny gun like this is going to shoot the same way that a full-size or a compact handgun will, and that's simply not the case. A 2.75-inch barrel, even with the best ammo available for it, you're not going to be getting the greatest, patterns in the world on paper, even at 7 yards. You're going to have a little bit of space in there. It's just hard to get that kind of accuracy with a little gun like this. Now, having said that, you can get decent enough accuracy, because the idea behind this gun, obviously it's a self-defense gun, and as long as you can place rounds accurately within the space you're trying to, within that defensive range, then it's a good choice for you. And some people will be able to shoot this better than others. That's the other thing to remember. Some people can take a gun like this and go to the range and shoot excellent all day long, and some people won't. Now, the trigger, you got to remember, it feels, I mentioned, earlier that this is a double action internal hammer. And the feel of this thing, you got a small bit of take up here, and then you are into a pretty heavy, steady pull. I mean, you can feel it building, and then all of a sudden you've got that break. Now, I don't think it's a bad trigger, but it is a heavy trigger. And in a way, that's not a bad thing, because for a gun like this, You know, I'm not a big fan of frame safeties on my guns anyway. And so a gun like this, that heavy trigger, you have to put a little bit of effort into pulling that trigger. So you're not going to just, I don't feel like anyone's going to accidentally pull through this trigger because of the weight of it. It's, like I say, it's not a bad feeling trigger, but it is heavy. Now, the one thing I noticed about this gun is I thought, like most little tiny guns like this that I've shot, that it was going to want to, move around a lot in my hand. But the LCP actually handles that 380 round pretty good. I was actually surprised at, I don't want to say it's a flat shooting gun because that would not be accurate, but when I take a shot, I'm not taking a lot of time to get back on target. So it's a flatter shooting gun than I expected it to be. So if you don't mind the 380 round as your defensive round, the LCP, 6+1, 7 rounds of 380 is a perfectly reasonable proposition, in my opinion, for a carry gun. You've heard me mention many times that I'm perfectly happy with, for example, 5 rounds of 38 Special and a 642, Smith. Well, I feel the same way about this. 7 rounds of 380, I think, is a perfectly good option. And the other thing about this gun, too, sometimes I get worried about small guns being picky about ammunition and such. For just range purposes, white box Federal rounds, no problem. I tried a number of defensive rounds, too, because sometimes when a little gun's going to mess up with me, it's always trying to choke down a hollow point. So these are 90 grain Hydra shocks. These did really well. I've carried these in a lot of little guns and had no problems. I've got some of the critical defense here. This is a 90 grain Hornady round here. These are pretty good. And then Remington has their ultimate defense. This is 102 grain. And this is the one that was the least accurate, at least for me. And when I say that, I'll shoot these different rounds. I'll shoot like a box of each and just kind of see what happens. And the result that I get obviously doesn't mean anything about which one is better. That just means I can shoot that particular one better. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. But I did the best job with the Hydra shocks. I've always liked these as a defensive round, and I've used these in many guns. Matter of fact, I used the 32 version of this in the Beretta Tomcat. I just think that they're good rounds for small guns. I think they've always done a good job. But that is going to be your range report. It's a pretty good little gun. It's reliable. It doesn't seem to be picky about ammunition, and that's what you're looking for in a carry gun. One thing I tell people is that the further along I get in my concealed carry journey, the more agreeable I am with smaller guns. In the beginning, like anybody else, I went and was picking out guns I thought were cool, and you're looking to accessorize and do all these things. You end up with all these unrealistic options that are so uncomfortable you wouldn't possibly carry it as a carry gun. You might carry it if you're in a job where you can stand up all day long and like if they allow you to carry open carry or something like that, but you wouldn't actually conceal it. So guns like these are options that will actually help you carry. And what I mean by that is that if the gun's uncomfortable, you'll think of excuses not to carry it. But if the gun can go right in your pocket, or it can go in a very comfortable holster, inside the waistband, you don't even give it a second thought, that can make a big difference. Now, you can use a number of different type of holsters with this, but they actually give you what I think is probably the perfect option for something like this. And they give this little pocket holster. Now, this reminds me a lot of the little DeSantis gun hide. They make one exactly like this. It has some kind of harder texture, and it's designed to go in your pocket, straight down in there, and it just holds the gun in your pocket. And then you just draw from the pocket. I think for something this size, this is a great option because in a way, this gun is so tiny, it's kind of silly for me to even try to think of putting it in the waistband in the first place. Now, of course, there's other ways of doing this. You've seen me talk about Sticky holsters before, and of course, Sticky makes tons of holsters in the same size. And of course, if you just want to get a standard holster with some kind of retention on it, some Kydex or something, feel free to do that. I am in no way telling you what to carry. What I'm saying is that for me, when a gun gets down to a certain size, when it gets tiny enough, to me it's going to automatically become a pocket gun, because I'm kind of used to carrying pocket guns in a certain way in the same pocket. And once they get over a certain size, they end up being a inside the waistband, holster like Kydex and leather. But this is definitely something that's light and small. It's extremely comfortable to go right in the pocket. And I think if you did that, like me, you'd probably have a hard time even remembering that you have it with you, because that's just how comfortable it ends up being. So what do we think of the Ruger LCP? Well, if you look at everything that you get, I've seen these priced anywhere from, around $220 to $250, $60. I think the MSRP on this gun is like $260. For that kind of money, there's not a lot of good pistols available. There's a few revolvers, you can get in that category, and there's a few other really cheap guns that I won't even name that I wouldn't carry. But, Ruger, I feel like that Ruger makes pretty good semi-auto handguns, and of course they make great revolvers, and I have a bit of trust in the Ruger brand. And so when I first looked at the LCP, I kind of kept that in the back of my mind. And this goes back to when I reviewed many other, like the LCP2 and the Max and some of the others that they've come out with. I kept an open mind because I've been happy with the quality and performance I get from Ruger. So, if you're looking for a good pocket gun that is not picky with ammo, extremely lightweight, and you're okay with 380, then this is a great handgun. It's not that expensive. It's reliable. There's not a lot of question marks for safety. It's got a very simple system as far as the trigger. There's very few things that you can do to mess up the experience with this gun. So I think it's a good choice for a lot of people. A lot of females like this gun because it's tiny. It fits their hands really well. And even though the trigger is kind of heavy, a lot of feedback I've gotten is they like that because they have to deliberately pull the trigger. They don't want a hair trigger, and they feel safe with that on there. So whether it's a purse gun or a pocket gun, or whether you just want something small to keep in a gun safe beside the bed, or whatever you like to do, the Ruger LCP has been around for a long time, and clearly the reason for that is because it does what it's supposed to do. And it still does it just as well as a lot of modern options that you can buy today. Okay, that's going to do it for today, everyone. As always, we appreciate you being with us. We'll be back very soon with another video for you. Till that time, as always, everybody stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.